Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a grand experiment. I'm David Newmeyer. I am chairing a committee of the Virginia State Bar, which will be described shortly. And this is the first in a series of public hearings. To my right is Krista Gantz, who is our staff director of the State Bar for the Access to Justice Committee and also for this special study committee. To my left is my good friend Andy Bridgman, who is chairing a parallel effort of the Access to Justice Commission, and Gail Warren, who is the long-term and now greatly missed law librarian for the state of Virginia, just retired in the last year, is going to start us off with an introduction to this process, and I'm grateful to have everyone here. Then we'll talk about how we're going to hear from witnesses. We had some people sign up online and others probably just showing up this afternoon, and we want to hear from everybody who wants to talk to us. So, Gail, would you please go ahead? And I'll mention also that this is being live streamed on YouTube, and also we have our members of the committee online also as well, and you may hear voices from them from time to time. So, Gail, please go ahead.
Thank you, David. And to second David's welcome, thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us tonight. So, as David mentioned, this is meets two purposes for two different committees. The first is the committee he referenced is the Virginia State Bar's Entry, Growth, and Distribution of Virginia Attorneys Study Committee. And essentially they're looking to see where are there legal deserts in Virginia, or even if someone wanted to hire an attorney, even if they had the funds to do that, is there someone nearby, or do they have to drive quite a distance to find that legal assistance? The other committee, or the other entity that's being represented here today, and for those of us who were here listening, is the Virginia Access to Justice Commission. And this was an organization created in 2013 by way of an order of the Supreme Court of Virginia. And we've done many projects, and I say we, I'm no longer on the commission after my retirement. Somebody else filled my slot. But I'm here today because I still am very interested in what the commission and what Virginia courts could do to provide better and more efficient access to justice in Virginia. Why are we here this evening? Well, we're here to listen to your stories. Listen to you or your clients' experiences in accessing legal assistance. We're here to listen to the challenges either you or people you work with or work for have had when they're trying to access or they're facing hearings or whatever in a Virginia courtroom. We're here to listen to the difficulties you may have had in either representing yourself or you know about difficulties that someone else has had in terms of representing themselves in a court in Virginia. We're also here, and we're really hoping for this, to listen to any ideas or suggestions you would have about increasing access to legal help or improving access to and navigation of Virginia's court system. So as David mentioned, I am Gail Warren, the recently retired state law librarian, and as I said, formerly a member of the commission. My purpose here today, after I sit down in a minute, is to listen. I'm not going to be speaking anymore. In addition to the panel you see here at the table, there are other members of our committee who are also here to listen, and I'd like to point out Ann Kleckner from the Legal Aid Works. Formerly, some of you may have known of that entity as Rappahannock Legal Services. And Jamie Clemmer, who is the Director of Domestic Violence Programs and Services at the Executive Secretary's Office. That's what we call the Court Administrator in Virginia, at the Supreme Court of Virginia. Just a few housekeeping items, and then again, I'm going to sit down. Please do sign in if you haven't. There's a sheet here at the table, and you can do that as you're leaving. We promise we're not going to be using your information for any purpose other than to verify who was here, and if for some reason we would like to reach out to you to get more information, if that's okay with you. Please do feel free to speak. There are not many people here. If we'd had a room full, I might have said, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or so, but I think this can be quite informal. I think the panel would agree. And so we would just like you to stand up and dive in and share your stories with us. Again, we're here to listen. If you're not comfortable speaking to the entire group, but you have thoughts you want to share, again, on the table there are pens and cards, I think maybe index cards or note cards, that you can write down some thoughts and share with us that way. And the other thing, last but not least, if again you prefer not to speak, but you'd like to, after the fact, get in touch with the members of these, the people who are here, just we can stop by, talk to somebody. You can get an email address, and you could send your comments to us that way. Okay. Having done this kind of thing with groups before, I feel it's really important to make sure that you're aware of where the fire exits are. And so you go, I'm curious, you go out the door and to your left, and then at the end of the hall, go to your right. We'll be outside, because we've decided that emergency cabinet isn't going to help us since it's locked. And the other thing is restrooms. If you're not familiar with the campus in this building, again, if you need a restroom, you go out the door to the left, and at the end of the hall, there are both men's and women's restrooms. So thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Gail.
The particular purpose of the Virginia State Bar in wanting to convene this process is a combination of factors that are affecting the access to legal help in Virginia. One is a problem that we've known about for a while. It's known as legal deserts. Like other professions such as healthcare, there are large areas in Virginia that do not have sufficient amount of legal assistance available, and I think lawyers on the Northern Neck are particularly aware of that, because I've heard about that by email from several. And as you can guess, rural areas are particularly prone to that, but there are urban areas as well that also qualify as legal deserts. We want to hear about what effect that has on people in trying to get legal help, and what happened to people as a result if they were not able to get legal help. And a second obstacle right now for us is a declining number of law graduates who are willing to take the Virginia State Bar and become Virginia lawyers after they graduate from law school. And right now, the number of graduates of Virginia schools who are taking the State Bar, well, it's dropped by a rapid decline. Total number of law graduates taking the Virginia Bar in the last 10 years has dropped by about 2/3, from about 1,800 to about 600. So that it has implications for everybody in being able to obtain legal help, whether you are an individual, a family, a small business, a large business. Finding legal help when you need it's going to become increasingly difficult. So we want to hear suggestions about both those issues. How do we attract lawyers to practice in rural areas? How to attract law graduates to want to take the Virginia Bar and stay in Virginia? And as well, other access to justice challenges that people have had. If you had a problem using the courts, we want to hear about that as well. And the Access to Justice Commission, which we are all four of us are active with, has a particular interest in how the courts are being used by people. So we want to hear about that too. So I want to introduce two other people in the room. Mike York, who just walked in, is the current president of Virginia State Bar. It's so great to have him here. And we also have a former president, Ed Weiner, who's joined us as well. So thank you both for your interest in this. Yay! And they both spend a lot of time on the Northern Neck, is what I hear. So it's excellent.
And you're both members of the Northern Neck Bar Association.
And that's even better. So that's good. Thank you for being here. So what we would like to do is start off with members of the public first, i.e. people who are not attorneys. And we had two people sign up in advance to say that they would like to be able to speak today. We'll take those first, and then anyone in the audience right now who would like to speak to us, I'd appreciate it if people, if they're able to come down and use the chair in front of us. That way you'll be closer to the microphone that's picking up our broadcast of this on YouTube and being transcribed as well. So the first name I have is Ireland Douglas. Is Ireland here? I hope I have that in correct order. No.
She is not here.
She's not here. Okay.
Well, we're open
Jay?
till 7, so.
We did have a third request to speak that came in late this afternoon, and that was Ruth Micklem.
Okay, thank you. All right. Is Ruth Micklem here?
Yes.
Okay, Ruth, can you speak to us, please?
Oh, goodness, let me see if I can get up.
Okay. So Ruth, it sounds like we do have an email address from you already. Jenny says yes, so that'd be great.
Yes, and I think you have an email address. Yes, it does.
Great, okay, we're good. So thank you.
Yeah.
Have a seat, please, and
Thank you.
please tell us your story.
Yeah, so hi.
Hi.
My name's Ruth Micklem, and
Where do you live?
I live in Whitestone.
Okay, thank you.
So in Lancaster County. So I'm really here, I guess, in a professional capacity because I work statewide, but I live here, and I think you're going to hear from some folks who live and who work here, and I can tell you about some of the challenges. But I sort of jotted down some notes so I could get this in some kind of order. And sort of how to start this off. So I work in the domestic violence and sexual assault field. I work for the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. In that capacity, I work with, we have a legal services program, which is essentially where someone calls our statewide hotline, and if they have a legal issue, we can direct those calls to a legal advocate who is not an attorney, who sort of talks to them about what their issue is, and then we have, we had 2 attorneys on staff. We now are down to 1 because of funding issues, but who can sort of walk them through, give them a little bit of, hear their experience, give them a little bit of direction. And then in most cases, what we try to do is link them with an attorney in their community. So the Northern Neck is an area that we sometimes get calls from, and we often get referred from the local domestic violence agency. We have a really hard time finding attorneys locally who will do, I mean, pro bono is almost non-existent. We have a legal fund where we can offer assistance to paying an attorney, and so we try to work with attorneys to sort of set up a low bono sort of system. What I can say about that, and I sort of offer that as an option that I think we could do more of, that can help sort of ease that transition, can sort of help folks who may or may not need an attorney before they are going and seeking attorneys. But I think it can also help. We work with folks who are in crisis or under stress, which can take up a lot of attorney time, right? They're often family law cases, custody, divorce, which are not fun, that we have a hard time finding affordable attorneys for around the state, particularly here in the Northern Neck. So I just offer this as an option, because one of the questions that I noticed on the survey was, what are some of the suggestions you have? So supporting other options that help build this network, I think, can be particularly helpful. And if you have questions, you can tell me to shut up. I'm trying to not be trying to stay within a, I don't know.
We haven't set any time yet, but you may be the first.
I know, I'll probably talk more too than anybody. You can tell me to stop. So where we have difficulty, particularly here in the Northern Neck, are I think around family law, divorce, custody, support, accessing affordable assistance. And that's certainly something that domestic violence victims are often needing, and we get a whole lot of calls about and trying to link those folks up with assistance. I can talk at another time, I don't need to do some of this, about some of the dynamics of using the court systems in domestic violence cases and how it ties up court and access to attorneys. I don't think that's the appropriate, but there is some link here to that stuff as well. And what are some of the ways that we could be better aware of that and sort of help courts do a better job. Now, and I also work closely with OES and other statewide partners too around these issues. Also, housing, there's lots of housing discrimination that we've experienced. And there's some folks who work here locally, and I don't want to let you guys talk to those things. I want to try to talk statewide more. Real lack of access to employment attorneys in the area, people that can help with employment discrimination. And one, I think, huge gap is around, here in the Northern Neck, immigration assistance. We're often only able to turn to legal aid, who is swamped, and just trying to find private attorneys where you might have an immigration case that has any complexities, and I'm not talking major complexities, I'm talking simple complexities. So that, I see that as a huge gap. I'm going to move on a little bit to talk about civil protective orders, which have gotten, which were originally created as pro se options for litigants who have gotten incredibly complex, and I think it requires many litigants to have attorneys to even go in, so they're often reaching out to legal aid or trying to find a private attorney to assist with this civil process. I think there's a whole lot we could do in the area of simplifying that. The other piece around protective orders is improving our online petitioning. Most states are using online petitioning for protective orders. The process is very simple, easy to access. OES has been working on, they have ICANN, which is an online protective order petitioning process, but not all courts use it, and they have lots of excuses to not use it. We've not been able to align with the Department of Juvenile Justice, who oversees court services and courts, around utilizing ICANN or an online petitioning system, I think, more effectively. So I really want to stress the importance of beefing that up and making that a little more accessible.
Ruth, I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. Can I throw out a couple more things? Well, yeah, I made that.
Thank you. Okay, well, just one question from me, and my colleagues may have questions as well. What's the impact when domestic violence victims cannot get legal help?
Sometimes it's death. Sometimes it's having to stay with a very abusive partner. Sometimes it's losing custody, not being able to raise your kids, not being able to keep your children safe. Sometimes it's losing housing, becoming homeless. So pretty severe consequences.
Thank you.
I know in one of his other hats, David is very involved with pro se litigants, and so I was sort of interested when you said with the protective orders that it's become more complicated. So I may want to try to follow up with you on that at some
I
point.
would be more than happy to talk with you
Yeah,
about
this
that.
probably not right now, but at some future point. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Can I
Ruth.
ask a question?
Ed, do you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay, it's only because you're Ed.
Appreciate it. With these referrals, do you have, like Ann has with Legal Aid Works, a financial threshold?
No.
Good for you.
Thank you.
The question for anyone live streaming was, is there a financial threshold at the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance's Project for the Empowerment of Survivors is the legal program? Is there a financial threshold for eligibility? And the answer to that is no.
We're really trying to fill a gap between legal aid and private attorneys, and we know that that's such a barrier for so many folks with accessing legal aid. So yes, we do not have a financial threshold.
Thank you. Douglas Jackson also indicated that he'd like to speak. Is he here? Okay. Anyone else without a law degree and a law pedigree that would like to speak? Please come on down.
You've been waiting, sir.
I've been waiting.
Oh, you've been waiting. Actually, you got here an hour early. So
Right.
3.
yes, so 2 hours early. Okay.
Please.
Hold on. We're gonna take him first. Okay.
I don't like putting my back to people, but at this time we will.
Okay. Tell us your name first.
James M. Long.
James M. Long, yes, I-
Northumberland County, the mother county of the Northern Neck.
Thank you.
All right. I'm an educator, 50 years. I'm on the Board of Supervisors in Northumberland County since 1991. And I'm on the president of NAACP in Northumberland. All right. I receive a lot of our citizens. Northumberland likes to tour the oldest populations in the Commonwealth, 65 and older. We have a lot of parents, grandparents that's raising school-age kids. And I get quite a few calls for legal help, all right? We used to have a legal office in Warsaw that I could contact. I haven't been able to get any information if they're still in Warsaw or not. But we need, you know, I went to the school board in Northumberland. I said, you said we're short of teachers. Let's have a class to grow our own teachers. And that's, I think, what we need to do as far as legal help. We need to find where we can get more legal help in the rural area for people. Because in a lot of cases, they need that help. So that's one of the biggest things I advocate for each and every day. I get calls, and a lot of times I'm in with the Commonwealth attorneys, which I can work through. But in some cases, I'm one of the few teachers that was able to teach 2 judges that judge in the Northern Neck. One is here today.
You did well.
Marcel Jones, up there, Judge Marcel Jones. But we have we have some people in our area that really try to help, but we just need some information on how we can get more legal help for these people. All right. That's basically
Thank you. Thank you very
what I
much.
have to say.
Okay. Questions?
Question. Are there specific areas that are recurring where they're looking for legal help? I mean, is it more domestic relations or?
Mostly, it might be bills.
Yeah, creditor,
Credit.
debtor creditor, yeah.
Credit. Might be credit, might be adoption.
Uh-huh.
Things of that area. Like we had a lady, we had the NAACP meeting the other night, and she said she had law enforcement following her
Mm-hmm.
She was a black lady. And, you know, they stopped, she didn't stop until she got in a lighter area, which was a good thing. But, and the way she described it was kind of intimidation at that time, you know. So, she didn't know what to do.
Mm.
But she came to the meeting and we told her things that she could do, you know. Always get the badge number, things like that, you know. So, but, you know, this having some legal help to really help these people on things they should do, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am? Please tell us your name, where you're from, and do we have your email address?
And my email address?
Do we have your email
I
address?
believe you do.
Okay.
I got an email.
Excellent. Perfect. Okay, please go
My
ahead.
name's Colleen Jordan. I work with the local domestic violence sexual assault agency. And my role with that agency is legal advocate. And I work very closely with law. One of their board members have been for a couple of years. And one of the biggest challenges I think that I see, just like Ruth touched on, our protective orders. I go to 4 counties in our service area, which is 5. Another coworker does the 5th. But today, just as a small example, I went to court in one of our counties expecting to provide advocacy services for 2 people that I knew of for protective orders, and we turned out that there were 5.
Oh.
And so one of the challenges, the 3 new people, none of them had the ability to access an attorney for protective order hearings. So bouncing around, they had 2 courtrooms going at the same time. And so trying to bounce back and forth to at least try to share some information at that preliminary level to assist people in hopefully getting the safety that they're looking for. I have shared with law before another challenge, and I keep coming back to protective orders because that's my area of specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Law is very limited in the attorneys that they have available, and so they have streamlined, and rightfully so, having to pick and choose who are the most important cases,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make an attorney available for the permanent hearing. And some of the experiences that I have been party to, I guess, or have witnessed, is so many clients are not able at the preliminary stage asking for a protective order. So much damage can often be done at that stage. And so by the time it gets to the permanent order, it's very difficult to undo what was done at the preliminary stage.
What kind of damage is done at preliminary?
Credibility,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. Not knowing how to present information accurately so that it's clearly understood. And as an advocate, I can try and encourage people before their hearing, but I'm not a lawyer, so I can't talk to them during the hearing. I can't write notes and say, hey, do this, do that. So they're really left to their own defenses. And I think Ruth touched on that many victims that come in, survivors that come in for those protective orders hearings, they're still in crisis. And trying to grasp all of this information, and just like Ruth mentioned, that the protective orders have become much more intricate, nuanced, and if you don't know what to ask for, or you have an advocate who has shared information but you forget, it just really, I think, leads to a lot of, or many more difficulties further down the road for people. And I would also say housing is also a challenge. Representation. We've had some experiences where people have been granted permanent protective orders and been provided possession of the home. But there's nothing really that says who has to pay the mortgage, who has to pay the rent. So when you have people who don't have income, that puts them in a predicament. And legal aid attorneys do the best that they can, but that's a long-term issue that people end up having to come back to court over and over again, and often legal aid is not able to continue in that journey. You looked like you might have had a question, Andrew.
I'm just thinking.
Okay.
I'm sort of processing as you say this, and this may. Is there any way in which there could be at least some support given technologically? YouTube, what to expect when you go into your preliminary, I mean, you know, and I don't know enough about this area to know whether what happens in Northumberland is different than what happens in Fairfax is different from what happens in a different county. I don't know how much there's county to county variance, because I know there is in certain other areas of law. But I know in Northern Virginia for a while, they couldn't handle all the bankruptcy cases, and then periodically they would do a training for people who were going into their bankruptcy hearings without counsel. I realize actually going to training is probably not going to happen in most of these cases. It's just never going to be convenient, or you might not even want to show up for any number of reasons. But I'm just wondering whether it might be possible to at least put some information in an accessible mode.
Through our agency, we do have a website. We do have information on that it's easily accessible. We try, and I'm thrilled to see in restrooms, doctor's offices, the hospital, right, we put our flyers up with our 800 number for people to be able to access information. I don't believe that we have gone as far as to do a training in each county. Yeah. Transportation is a big challenge, yes, for people. And our staffing. We are really at our max too, just like everybody else.
And one more question. To what extent are language barriers involved here?
We are fortunate. We have a couple of people on our staff that are bilingual, but there are only a couple of people. Mm-hmm. We do access the language line. We try to utilize that, mm-hmm, as needed, but creating an environment where people are comfortable to come and talk, you know, with people who speak their same language, mm-hmm, is also a challenge.
How would you say the income levels of the population you serve breaks down? Would you say the majority wouldn't be able to afford an attorney even if one was available, or is it a mix?
I would say the people that I work with, the majority would not be able to afford. Now, but they also may be above the mm-hmm, criteria, mm-hmm, for law. So there is that gap. We have been fortunate, and it all depends on funding. We a few times have had a little pocket of money that we've been able to retain at a reduced rate on behalf of a client. One attorney out of Glen Allen who comes here and does, mm-hmm, some cases, an attorney out of Whitestone, and it's the first time ever we paid her $1,500 and she sent back $750, which I was really thrilled for that. But it is very challenging and very difficult to find attorneys that if we don't have the money available and that they'll accept it at a reduced rate, most of our clients don't have it either.
How are you doing outreach to the attorneys that are in the area that could potentially serve clients?
The attorneys in our area, mm-hmm, the number that are available have dwindled greatly. The attorney from Glen Allen used to practice in the Whitestone area, and mm-hmm, a number of years ago moved to Glen Allen. I've worked for our agency for a period of time, so sometimes the way we recruit is I pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, can you do us a favor? We are very limited in the attorneys. Through legal aid, we have streamlined a referral process to try to get law attorneys available for people with protective orders quickly. Mm-hmm. And that's helped a lot, but we're still so short of attorneys that it still leaves a lot of people in need. I pretty much thank you for letting me express my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone else without a law degree that would like to be heard from?
I knew about getting signed up.
Come on down.
Please, please take a seat. Tell us your name, please, where you're from.
No, my name is Thomas Humner from Northumberland County, Reedsville.
Okay. And do we have your email address?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
I have several issues. You touched on some right from the start. Lawyers. The number in our county is dwindling. As a matter of fact, mine's at the end of the year, he's done.
Huh.
We'll find it just say very difficult, even when it comes to buying property. I brought 2 pieces of property from my family members a couple of summers ago. It took me 9 months on one piece, and it took me 11 months on the other piece. And it wasn't like we couldn't find these family members, because we had everybody's address and we knew where they were. And I'm hearing more and more people saying they have to go all the way over to the Middle Peninsula to get a lawyer, to write up us. And a whole lot of times, just a simple deed. This, I mean, I understand that David started from the start. What can we do to get some younger lawyers, especially in Northumberland County and in the Northern Neck? And I talked to my lawyer, and basically what he said was, when these kids are graduating from school, they're going to other places where they can make a whole lot more money. And the money is just not in the Northern Neck. You're dealing with a lot of low-income people. And as Mr. Long said, I just joined that fray 65 a couple months ago. And I think 65% of our population is 65 or older. All the younger kids, such as mine, get degrees, they move away. And I don't know what we can do about trying to get younger lawyers here. Like I said, most of it is because of money. And then I went before the Board of Supervisors, healthcare. If we get sick, we have to go to the emergency room. If we had Barnes Secure and Heathfield, but when you go, we can get you in next week. We might be able to get you in week after next. But if you're sick, you need to be seen right then. And I brought this up numerous times. Mr. Long can vouch for it, the Board of Supervisors. But then again, I'm finding out too the reason why we can't get any health providers there. Very few people, if you're not with the biggest employer in the county, which is Omega Protein, the school system or the sheriff, 9 times out of 10 you don't have health care. And one more issue I'm going to touch on will be the school system. I'm finding out a lot of people too are complaining about bullying in the schools.
About what?
Bullying.
Bullying.
And have to keep going around and around and around in circles, going back to the same people that you have to deal with, and you try to go further. And, well, you need to go to the chain of command. Well, the chain of command is where I'm having the problem at. Where I need to go to. You told me to go back here. And I went back there. Nothing solved, no problem solved. And over and over and over and over and over again. Then just as soon as the student hits this other student, that student is expelled. And that shouldn't be, because that should have been solved right there. And I'm finding a lot of people in our neighborhood is going through that. And it should not be. Because y'all know this bullying thing, because I did go on the bully website, and it told me a lot as to what to do and how these people can get relief. but you still have to go through that chain of command in your school system. And by that time, it may very well be too late. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Questions?
Do you get the sense that the parents whose children, or the grown-ups, that caregivers, guardians of these children, understand that sometimes those school discipline problems involve legal issues? Do you think people are aware of that?
No. No. When you're dealing with 12 or 13 years old, and I know some of these parents of some of these kids, they get a lot of bullying in school too, so I'm thinking it's being passed down.
Yeah.
So.
That's one of the problems that we see in access to legal services, that oftentimes the first barrier to access is just understanding that you have a legal issue in the first place. And then you don't know where to look for help, or that help is even an option. So I think some public education around, what is a legal issue in the context of what's happening at school could potentially be helpful for your community members.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Isn't that part of the problem we hear from them? Because even though you know it's a legal issue, and you identify the legal issue, then getting someone to help you with that legal issue.
And just like she was saying, a lot of people in our area do not have the money to hire on. And as far as legal aid, at one time it was around, but it just seemed like it just vanished. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good. Anyone else without a law degree? Someone with a law degree, I mangled his last name. I think I introduced you as Michael York, which is half the name of your law firm, but the wrong half. Mike, would you announce your last name for us, please?
It's just like New York. York, Y-O-R-K, simple as that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Good. All right. And now we can hear from people with law degrees. Please come down.
I did not sign up. I didn't know there was a sign up.
Okay. Well, you're not too late. There's a piece of paper in front of you, so you just want to make sure we get your email address more than anything
I will
else.
make sure you have it.
Okay.
My name is Erin Hapgood, and I'm the Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney in Northumberland County.
Oh.
And I had some things I wanted to say and some more things I've taken notes on with the other speakers, so I'll try to get through quickly, and then you can follow up with any questions that you want. I don't usually share my biography, but I think it's relevant today. So I graduated from law school in 2004, and my first job was on the Northern Neck in Montrose in Westmoreland County. I made $40,000 in 2004, but it was the best place to start practicing law because every single member of the Northern Neck Bar was a mentor to me. And my boss was a real estate attorney. He couldn't help me with criminal law or GAL work, but I just had to pick up the phone. So it's a great place to practice. Then my first son was born, and we couldn't afford to stay because health insurance cost too much, and I wasn't making enough. So we left, went to Roanoke. I worked for a firm there, and with that firm, I did civil defense work, and I was everywhere from Wise and Dickinson to Fairfax to Olive White, everywhere in the state except the Eastern Shore. I never got out there. So I saw a lot of courts, and I realized how special the Northern Neck was, and the judges we had and the bar that we had. So I've sort of worked my way back, went from Roanoke to Richmond, and the Richmond finally back here to the Northern Neck, and I'm very glad to be back. No one in my family was an attorney, so I had no connections, self-financed my whole education, so loans are a big part of what I wanted to talk about as far as bringing new attorneys and young attorneys in. I think that we have a lot to offer young attorneys in this area, a lot of court time if they want it, a lot of mentorship from the bar. Every single member, I guarantee, would help a young attorney because we all want. I'm 47 years old, and I'm one of the young attorneys on the Northern Neck. So that tells you something. So as far as bringing more attorneys in, maybe extending public service loan forgiveness on the state level to include attorneys who don't work for a qualifying employer, but who may do majority court-appointed work or guardian ad litem work. Northumberland County, as some of the others have said, is particularly strapped right now. We have myself, my boss, the elected Commonwealth attorney, 2 other attorneys that work full-time. One only does court-appointed work, no private work at all, and one who's semi-retired. That's it. So getting court-appointed lawyers, they come from other jurisdictions. All the court-appointed lawyers, it's the majority of the criminal defense, and they have to go to all the jurisdictions in order to be able to make a living. So they might drive 40 minutes from one court to the other in the same day. They might be in 3 courts in one day. We have to hold court sometimes because we have to wait for our attorneys and respect their schedules. We only have court once a week for each court, which makes the court days can be difficult and long, especially in juvenile court. So we've had some attorneys who come off the court-appointed list in juvenile court because they just can't afford to spend that much time in court waiting for their case to be called. Sometimes we're in court till, not Northumberland, we're a smaller jurisdiction, but sometimes I cover Westmoreland. Last time I was there in JDR, we got out at 7:30 at night. So that's another challenge. Young attorneys can't afford to just move out here with no connections. Even our small firms, we have some wonderful small firms, they can't afford to bring on young attorneys because they lose money on them for a couple of years. And so they're very limited in how many people they can employ. So it really goes to solo practitioners, and that's the majority of what we have. And it can be really challenging for people, especially if you're paying student loans. Come October, I'll be 20 years paying my student loans, and I've still got about $38,000 left. And I never took anything but federally subsidized loans, $18,500 for each one of my years in law school. And I've been paying it diligently, and I'm still not done. So that's certainly the biggest. Also, a rural area is hard to recruit people. You have to want to live in a rural area. There has to be something in you that is not a city person, that accepts that you're far away from Walmart, and there is no Target, and no Starbucks. But I think that what we have to offer young attorneys as far as growth more than makes up for that. Housing's difficult for young attorneys. Rentals are very difficult to find. Buying a house is almost impossible for someone just out of law school, especially if you've got loans. So all of those things are barriers to having more people here. And then as far as access to representation, the private lawyers, if they don't qualify for court-appointed counsel, the private lawyers have to charge enough to make a living. And there is that big gap. People who can't afford to hire representation but don't qualify for court-appointed attorneys. Most of our people qualify for court-appointed, but it certainly does happen. To the protective order issue, it can be really difficult for the domestic violence victims in protective orders. It's a hard enough time when they're trying to leave, a dangerous time. They're usually scared to even be in court with them. I can't help them in court because it's a civil proceeding. So our victim witness, Colleen and her colleagues work very hard to try and make these victims feel comfortable and safe enough to share their story with the judge. But just like some of the other people have said, that preliminary protective order hearing can do a lot of damage because the worst domestic abusers are the most manipulative and usually the best spoken. And the victims are the least prepared to address it. And a lot of times I'll sit in there and it's just, I want to jump up. I just want to ask a question. Ask him if he's a felon, you know, and tell him about the 5 years of history that you've had with this person, not just this one charge that finally got brought. And they just, they share so much more with us than they do with the judge because they're just so intimidated. And recently I prevailed on one of our defense attorneys to help a victim who had a protective order denied in JDR on her appeal because I thought it was really important that she have that protection, and thank goodness that attorney agreed to do it and the victim got her protective order. As far as filing them online, at least in my experience, I don't know that that would make a huge difference for our population. A lot of them wouldn't necessarily use it. They'd come into our office and then we'd tell them about it and we'd sit there and do it together. And we don't usually have a problem because we have our court services unit there on the same day that court's there, so they can call on the phone, give the court services their information, and then sign the petition when they come for the hearing. So they've worked with our people very well to make that happen. I like the YouTube training video idea for domestic violence and protective orders, because a scheduled training is not going to work for DV victims because they never know when they're going to need it. But if we can say, hey, check out this YouTube channel, you know, then I think they would actually do that because that's something they're comfortable with. Someone also mentioned elder law, estate planning, and so forth, and that's absolutely non-existent where we are. And most of the people who need it couldn't afford it anyway. But where we see it is people who die intestate, and 5 siblings inherit the house, and they're at war with each other. We've had criminal charges, property damage claims, trespassing claims, eviction by protective order, you name it. And they can't afford a partition suit. And there was no estate planning to say sell the house and split the proceeds. And they all have a right to live there. And sometimes there are children there who see the adults behaving this way to each other. The demographics in our county are quite disparate. We have a lot of retirees, as they mentioned, who are quite wealthy. They are not necessarily integrated into the community and don't support the legal community because they mostly have their own lawyers in Northern Virginia or Richmond, wherever they came from. So if they need estate planning, if they need something, they already have somebody available and they can pay for it. So they're not even necessarily bringing that work to our local firms. Our school-aged population, 70% live below the poverty line. And that's much more representative of what our community is, what our county is, absent that money that comes in for the waterfront property, because we have more waterfront mileage than any other county in the Commonwealth. So, and one more thing on the school issues and school disciplinary issues. That is one where kids and parents don't even know to ask. And they don't know special ed or disciplinary in front of the board. And I've seen some quite tragic things happen with kids in the disciplinary realm, disparate outcomes for different kids. And, you know, just one attorney in there to be able to dig into it and kind of at least let them know what their rights are, hold the school accountable and to their own rules, so they can't kind of do what they want with whatever kid comes in front of them. So those are the issues that I wanted to address, and I will make sure you have my email. I'm happy to talk about this at any time because I think it's a really important issue, and I'm glad that you all have this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Do you guys have questions?
Oh, go ahead.
I have questions. Do you
Okay,
mind, Ms. Happy?
please.
So 3 things came to mind. One is there are parallels, I think, between the legal profession and the medical profession in terms of serving particularly rural populations. But one of the things that I think the medical profession has been better at is using paramedics of all kinds, you know, nurse practitioners, so on and so forth. Are there paralegals in this area? Are there things that they could do? I mean, I guess, Colleen, to some extent, you're functioning as a paralegal, but is there a way to develop non-lawyer resources that could support some of these problems?
Possibly, but most of the local lawyers' time is spent in court. You know, the ones that don't just do real estate, or, you know, and those tend to be the firms.
Right.
So there's not a huge amount that a paralegal could do. We're not a heavy legal research area.
Right.
You know, we're not a heavy discovery area because we have a very open relationship with our defense attorneys. There just aren't that many functions that a paralegal can necessarily take off the plate of the attorney.
Okay, that was question number 1. Question number 2. Judge, you'll forgive me for saying this. I have been in court 2 or 3 times for pro bono, like arrest record expungements. I'm not a court person, so I apologize to the entire court-related community when I say this. But when you talk about the protective orders and how you're sitting in the back, crying inside, then do you think that it would help to have some training for judges in these cases? Like the Access to Justice Commission does have a judge from every level of the court system in Virginia sitting on the commission. And I think they're doing a pretty good job with judicial education and what they refer to as like the desk books. I'm not going to get this right. Bench books. Thank you, desk bench. I apologize. I did a lot of contracts work, so just so you know. But I'm wondering if that might be something that would be able to be explored or brought up in terms of, I don't know.
I'm all about more training.
Yeah.
I think generally our judges are very good and they get it right most of the time. I mean, and nobody's perfect. So.
And I didn't mean that they weren't getting it right. But when you talk about sort of if she had known either to bring up this issue or if someone had asked her that question, and I know that judges are not only supposed to appear impartial, but are supposed to be impartial. But I guess the question is everybody comfortable with where that line is? And I'm
as far as whether the judge would be comfortable asking some of those questions that maybe a lawyer would.
He might feel like leading questions.
Yes. They tend not to. We have one juvenile court judge, but it's not Judge Jones.
Thank you.
Most of the time. And he will ask questions, but I think he might think eliciting additional evidence rather than just getting more detail about the testimony.
Okay. Right.
I haven't seen him do that, so maybe that would feel like it was too much, like he was being an advocate.
Okay, all right, my last question is a comment. So in terms of people dying intestate, I used to do a lot more work than I do now listening to what other states do with pro bono activities. And there's actually a group in one of the California cities that would literally put a bunch of lawyers on a bus and send them out to, no, I'm not making this up. And they would have like, we're going to do your will day. And they would show up, at the county courthouse, and there would be notice a couple of weeks in advance. And it's like, if you need a simple will done, we will meet with you, we will run you through these questions, and we will get this done. There you can use paralegals.
Pre-COVID, we did an annual Elder Law Day with the Northern Neck Bar, and we're getting that back up and going. And I think we would do it in a couple jurisdictions. That was very popular. I was never involved in that because that's not my specialty.
Understood.
So I don't know how, and maybe Ms. Lank knows more about it. I know they were well attended.
Right.
But I don't know how many of the people who needed it most were attending.
Understood. So I know that Ann Klockner's colleagues at Legal Services in Northern Virginia have a pro bono program called Wills on Wheels, where they will go to people with... That
would be great.
And so I'm wondering if it might be possible to import some lawyers from... So I don't know.
There are a group of Richmond lawyers that do this, do a roadshow. So
maybe they need to go a little further north. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. It is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
As far as informational, as far as your Virginia library system has very good resources on their website that anyone who's a member of the library can go in, and they got all kinds of forms, wills, anything you can think of. They got online training for anything you can think of. So that's another resource as far as different ways people can get more information.
Thank you for that suggestion. Virginia Library System, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's very good. Excellent.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone else like to be heard? Ma'am, come on down.
I have not signed in, so I need to do that, and I will provide my email address.
Excellent. Okay. Please tell us your name and where you live.
My name is Kim McCartney. I live in Montrose. I've worked for Legal Aid in the Tappahannock office for about 19 years. I do intakes, and I attempt to coordinate cases with pro bono attorneys.
Okay.
Yeah. I am, as part of my intake process, I gather the information about the client, the applicant's problem and their income. I'm also the person who unfortunately has to tell them very often that we cannot help them. We don't have enough attorneys available. They're over the income guideline, which is super, super low. I know that they can't afford an attorney, but I have to tell them, no, you make too much money. And this is somebody who's struggling, who's working, who's trying to feed their kids. But they're over our guidelines because we have to take the cases that we can handle and handle well. And for that reason, we have to turn away a lot of cases that we would really like to help. I've really appreciated hearing all of the speakers here. They've had some very, very good points that I totally agree with. Some of the areas that we do not represent on because we just don't have the manpower, education, bankruptcy, adoptions, estate law, and I get calls every day for people who are just trying to do a simple transfer of property. Mm-hmm. The only way that I can do a transfer of property case is to suggest that we do a will, and they can, and the way that I do the wills is with my one volunteer attorney who lives in King William County and is doing cases for all three of our offices, our Culpeper office, our Fredericksburg office, and our local Tappahannock office. We have one attorney who will agree to volunteer to do those. Mm. We do have an attorney desert. You know, I heard that said. I know that we have very few, but we also have very little participation with the pro bono program. I go out from time to time trying to get folks to agree to take one case. I don't have that much time to get away from my office because I'm always taking the cases in, so it's not like I can run out and try to talk attorneys into taking cases for us, the few that are out there who haven't retired or passed away or whatever. I heard a mention of asking paralegals to assist. One of the things that I have had pounded into my head the whole time that I've worked there is that we have to be so careful that we're not giving legal advice. We're not attorneys. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point, but that's a slippery slope. Talking about the Wills on Wheels, we have done that. We've done that in the Fredericksburg office. We've done it in the Culpeper office. It is so much coordination, and we have to have attorneys willing to come in and sit down and do that, give their one day. We provide all of the backup. We provide, having the printers there, having everything ready to go, having the client having filled out everything ahead of time with all the information, so it's super easy to go. And even so, I don't have any takers. So.
But pro bono volunteers specifically?
Pro bono volunteers specifically. A will is so easy. We have templates if it's an attorney who hasn't done a lot of that kind of thing. Ann is working on putting together a CLE so that attorneys who maybe haven't done that can get their CLE and have some more confidence in doing that kind of a case. So, we're trying to do that, but there are just so few who will take those cases.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you think it would be effective if to do teleservice? I mean, if you could have the client, let's just assume the clients can't figure out Zoom or whatever, to have the client in your office, could they be serviced? I assume they could be serviced remotely by an attorney, right? Do they need to be in the same room for that?
They don't need to be in the same room. We could do that kind of thing if we can get attorneys from outside the area who are willing to help, if they're aware that there's this area that has so few. We could probably work that out or have them come into our office. I will sit down with them. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of tech savvy people who are coming in at our income guidelines, right. Who can navigate that. But
that's what I was assuming. That's why I said maybe from your office, if you could set that up.
Right. There again, I'm one person in an office of 4. The attorneys are generally in court. It's not that I mind doing that. I would love to do that. As a matter of fact, the one attorney who does the cases for us, I do his typing because he's retired. And so for all those cases that come through, I'm literally sitting there. He writes it up. I type it. We're doing our best. But adoption specifically, that was mentioned. I've had people come in who, it was somebody here mentioned, I think you mentioned grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. I've had people come into me looking for help with an adoption. Their grandchild is there, the parents have agreed to it, but we can't do adoptions because we're not set up to do adoptions, and it would help benefit this child. And there's this child that I'm looking at the grandmother and saying, no, I'm sorry, I've known you for 10 years, but I can't help you with your grandchild. It's heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you're here and listening, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for
Thank
the work
you.
that
Thank
you
you very
do.
much. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Diane, please come down.
Please.
Get that out of the way. My name is Diane Lang. I think you have my email address?
Melissa, we do.
I'm going to tell my story like Erin did. I opened up my law office the same month I went on Medicare. I had practiced, I was big law in Baltimore. Went to Canada, was in-house counsel for a lot of years. Came back here because my folks left me their house. And we said, well, let's move back to Virginia, maybe it's time. I'd never done the kind of law I'm doing now. If I started out doing this law, I would be burned out. I would have been burned out 30 years ago. We have a real crisis. We have a real crisis in the family law area here. You can't, woman comes in who works at McDonald's, who's in an abusive relationship, and she wants to hire you for custody visitation. You have to say, you can't afford me. But maybe I'll get appointed GAL. And that's often what I tell, I do about 80% of my work is guardian ad litem work. But we're really short on guardians ad litem now. And the way the state looks at things, guardians ad litem cannot job out stuff. They're supposed to do it all themselves, whether it be requesting medical records or talking to the principal at school. It's all supposed to be the GAL herself or himself who's doing that, which is absurd. There is no reason why I should have to devote my time to write a medical records request to VCU. It's a waste of my time. I use my staff for it, but because I am in the retirement age, I can afford to pay my staff even with the pittance that I get from my guardian ad litem work. We need people who can represent people in divorces. We need people who can be guardians ad litem, and unlike other areas, you can't bus people in to be a GAL. They gotta be able to do home visits. They gotta be local. They gotta know the teachers to be able to figure out what's going on. But there are ways, I think, that we could go a whole lot more self-service. When I was in Maryland, I assume they still do this, they have a self-serve divorce. If there's no property, no kids, you can go fill out a form and get divorced. It's very, very easy. Why can't we do it here? I mean, I do a ton of pro bono stuff, some through legal aid, some just under the table. But just to get a simple divorce, you cannot do it yourself here. You cannot do a divorce by yourself in Virginia, I don't think. I often refer people to the legal aid website for Virginia. They have got fantastic information. I second what everybody's saying about protective orders. I have a case where it's effectively pro bono. I'm representing a woman on a protective order for her daughter. I bet I spent 3 hours researching, and Mr. Briggs can talk about this too. The protective order statutes are almost impenetrable. You've got protective orders for family abuse. You've got protective orders for child abuse. You've got protective orders that are in GDC. You've got protective orders that are in JDR. I can't keep them all straight. I do think that in addition to having some more self-serve stuff, we have got to deputize paraprofessionals who can help people in court. I would love, Colleen Jordan from The Haven was talking about how frustrated she is in court. I would love her to be able to sit next to her client and say, don't forget to mention this. Don't forget to mention that. She can't. I mean, we have, we're this specialized field of people that, don't anybody else dare talk to the court. There's no reason that paraprofessionals cannot draft simple wills, cannot represent folks in protective orders. Yes, they need some skill and training and knowledge of the law, but they don't have to be lawyers. Represent people in protective orders, write up deeds, and record the deeds without having to worry about having a lawyer. I think what David said earlier about we have a third fewer people taking the Virginia bar today than did 10 years ago. That is friggin' scary.
2/3 fewer.
Yeah. 2/3. That is really scary. That doesn't bode well for the Northern Neck.
No.
But if we can train others they gotta stay in their lane, but to be of assistance to these people who need help. I just think there's a lot simply we can do. I echo people, this area is not super on technology. It's frustrating. Another thing the bar might look at is trying to get people like me, who, I know we have got retired lawyers in the Northern Neck, and I have talked to some and said, hey, come back and do this or that. But maybe there has to be more of an outreach for that. Yes, we need younger lawyers, absolutely. Aaron should not be basically the youngest person in the bar. But some of us old fogies are still capable of doing some stuff too. And maybe we could channel them into discrete areas to help out. But financially, I know that rack rates around here are much lower than they are in Fredericksburg or Richmond, but still, even at $200 an hour, how many people can afford that? That's right. They simply can't afford it. So we have a crisis. We got to figure out a way to do it, and that's why I'm glad you're here. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Questions?
Sure. Yes, please go ahead.
No,
Oh. Anyone else? Come down, sir.
Good evening. I'm Tom Savage. I live in Colonial Beach now. I was a trial lawyer in Fredericksburg for about 35 years. And when I moved to Colonial Beach, I dropped all the heavy litigation and then took on the role as a guardian ad litem. So I've been a guardian ad litem in the Commonwealth for a total of about 42 years. I finished up my last case last January because my wife told me at 68 years of age I'm too old to work that hard. Unlike Diane, who has more energy than I do. I'm currently no longer a guardian ad litem. I'm a substitute judge for the 15th Circuit and statewide, but I primarily sit in courts in the 15th Circuit on here. A lot of what has been said by the other speakers, I'm going to try not to replicate. I'll just comment on something that Ms. Hapgood said about the small numbers of attorneys in Northumberland. I sit in court cases from Stafford all the way down to Northumberland, and in the Northern Neck, it's the same 5 faces you see in every courtroom, not just in Northumberland, but there's Diane, there was me before I bailed out on her. There are 2 or 3 other attorneys, and it's the same faces in the same courtrooms almost exclusively. I've retired from that line of work, and another attorney, I think that maybe Ms. Hepgood mentioned, recently also left that field, I believe. So we're probably down to less than a handful of attorneys that do guardian ad litem work, and probably also court-appointed work on the criminal side as well. So once you all, or whoever is going to make the determination of where exactly the legal deserts are, I have no doubt that we're going to qualify, probably Southwest Virginia as well. So anyway, one thought that I said, well, how do you turn this around? As I was driving down here from Colonial Beach, I thought, well, we need to get more younger lawyers down here. I agree that the younger lawyers with children generally can't make a living on guardian ad litem fees or court-appointed attorneys' fees. Also, too, we don't have huge population bases in the Northern Neck. But my thought is that for the last 40 years, I see in our bar publications it used to be called something else, but it's now called Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program, where we're educating the judges and the lawyers about their substance abuse issues and help for them. Maybe if we could do a similar thing in the bar publications, basically a promotional ad for the Northern Neck, for Southwestern Virginia. I think some of the other speakers have spoken on it, but I just did a short list after having worked in Fredericksburg, which many people consider Northern Virginia now. I don't. But having been there and compared it to practice here, there's a lot to draw, I believe, as one of the speakers said, there's a lot to draw younger lawyers here. No traffic. The traffic up there brings people to handguns out the windows at each other. I haven't had that happen to me since I moved here. No traffic. Everybody, not everybody, but 95% of the people in the court system are civil to one another. We have understanding judges. They realize that you can't be in Tappahannock at 9 and down in Northumberland by 11. Sometimes we have to give and wait a bit there. We've got wonderful clerks. When I was a guardian ad litem, one of the clerks in my district gave me corn. I never got corn in Spotsylvania County. There's low crime rate down here. That may not bring many criminal lawyers down this way, but to live here as a young lawyer, low crime rate, beautiful environment, lots of water, relatively low cost of living. I realize there are a lot of people that cannot afford much, but compared to Fredericksburg or Fairfax, it is a relatively low cost of living. So if we could put in the bar publications addressed to all of the lawyers, but primarily the younger ones, is that this is a great place to live, it's a great place to work, it's a great place to develop a practice, not just for your younger years, but on into your middle age and older years as well. So that's the solution. Thank you.
I'd like to say one thing while you're there. Judge, we have a lot of gangs in the rural area. It's causing problems. So this is something that really needs to be corrected. I don't know how, but I taught school for a number of years and I work with young kids. A lot of these young kids are with the grandparents, and grandparents are not disciplined like they should, and the kids are running wild. We got 2 or 3 gangs in Northumberland County where they're shooting at each other's cars. So this is not good at all. So
that's true. Thank you for bringing that up. Right. And thank you for educating Judge Jones. You did an excellent job. Any other questions?
You'd be willing to write an article for the bar, the bar journal?
I would consider certainly there are other better journalists than I, but I certainly would consider helping.
There was an ad run by an attorney in Tazewell that was offering reduced cost or free office space for attorneys that wanted to move to that area, and our executive director reached out to that attorney to say thank you. It was in our magazine, and I think his idea was that we should be doing more of that kind of thing around the Commonwealth. And we often talk about the legal deserts, but I think it was President York that said maybe we should start calling them legal opportunity zones. And there might be a way to sort of do a regular legal opportunity zone highlight, not only in the magazine, but maybe to YLC members in their publication that goes out on a quarterly basis. I think it actually may go out more often than that. So we just need volunteers that understand, know, and love the area to provide the content, and we're more than happy to get the word out.
And you do have my email address.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Come on down, please.
My name is Brianna Weiner. I'm an attorney here in Virginia, but I'm also licensed in Tennessee and Texas. I don't live in Virginia full time, but spend a lot of time here. So I guess I am one of the young attorneys that has been spoken about, and sadly I don't live here in the Northern Neck, but I have a lot of interest in the well-being of this community. So as someone that has sort of recently graduated from law school, and then took the bar as one of the 1/3 that still takes the Virginia bar, we're graduating from law school less, we're going to law school less, we're graduating from law school less are taking the Virginia bar, and more are graduating with terrible debt and student loans. So to have people move to an area where the opportunities for large salaries are just not there can seem like a silly ask. I think that, well, I went to law school in Tennessee, and one thing that actually struck me about my law school was the fact that their whole mission was to produce lawyers that would go out into the Appalachian area and serve in those areas, which are also some zones of opportunity for lawyers. And so I think that partnering with the law schools and kind of sharing this need, but also sharing the opportunity, is really important, because the Northern Neck, really I think the closest law schools are Richmond,
Tidewater.
Tidewater area. And a lot of those people don't even stay in those areas to start their legal career. But I think that one of the things, and some other people have mentioned, utilizing more remote hearings, because if we can't bring young people here, or any lawyer, being able to say, okay, stay where you are, but you still can help an area from wherever you may find yourself. I think that can be really, really useful. And I understand some opportunities. One woman was mentioning guardians ad litem. I was a guardian ad litem when I lived in Texas, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, but at one point I believe Virginia guardian ad litems had to be attorneys. Is that still? Okay, so that limits right there. When I was in Texas, I happened to be an attorney, but that's not the case there. Guardians ad litem do not have to be attorneys, and even then they were struggling to find people, but at least they had the whole public instead of this small sector of people with JDs. So I think that could be one solution for that, is opening that opportunity up. This is not a problem that is unique to Virginia. I know that because I'm still active in both the Tennessee and Texas bars, and I think it's really important to not feel like we need to isolate and figure this problem out just as Virginians, because this is a nationwide problem. We need to be figuring out what are the other states doing, how are they tackling it, and maybe that's through the ABA, or just some other connections that we have with other states. I know that the Virginia State Bar Young Lawyers Conference did do a clinic where we went out to Southwest Virginia and did a wills, I'm pretty sure it was a wills clinic. And I think utilizing that more, and maybe saying, partnering with some of the local attorneys here and say, if we brought down some people, could you host them for a night? And so we could have a 2-day experience. So then people aren't put out trying to figure out hotels while we're here, but we could increase our impact by having it be a 2-day, maybe a full weekend sort of thing. I really think that in order to attract young lawyers, it has to come down to the mentorship. I know so many people from my law school who, you know, they wanted to serve this mission of going out into the Appalachian or other areas that don't have a lot of law offices. And to me, that was a very scary thing. I can't imagine going out and after law school and, you know, hanging my own shingle and having people's lives, their money, you know, in my hands. But if you have mentorship, then you gain the confidence to do things. You have someone to turn to say, this is my first one I've ever done of whatever it is. Can you just look it over? So as long as the you know, attorneys that are still here are willing to pitch in and be mentors, that will attract people. Because I think that one of the things that you miss in big law, and I do work as corporate counsel, is the mentorship. So with the inactive attorneys that are still in the area, maybe we find a way that maybe they don't want to be active again, maybe they don't want to pay, you know, renew their membership to be active, but maybe there's a way to keep them as inactive status, but have them be able to help in other capacities. I think that's about it. I know that the Virginia Bar Association has task forces on the decline of bar takers. And I know that the State Bar also has similar task forces, and I think that that is a good partnership that this committee can also have, because ultimately, if we have less people taking the bar nationwide, less taking the bar in Virginia, we're not going to have a large pool to come down to the Northern Neck at all. So, thank you.
Let me ask you a quick question. Did you actually sit for the full Virginia bar?
I was already licensed in Tennessee, so I only had to take the Virginia portion of the bar. But it was shocking how empty that room was. It was.
Was it February or July?
It was the February bar.
Ah.
It was a February bar, so it's not the most popular.
Right.
But I do know people that took the February bar that said it was just about as sad. Yes.
What brought you back to Virginia? Family.
Yes, definitely. I mean, being a Virginia attorney was really my big goal. The other two were just extra credit. I knew that Virginia, we can be sort of sticks in the mud about change.
Yeah.
Truly. Yeah. But
out of the mouths of babes.
Right. And I knew that Virginia as a whole needs more young attorneys. And, you know, one of the things that is brought up with this task force is the fact that Virginia is not part of the uniform bar exam, which I could go on for ages about. But that's a huge thing that sets Virginia apart in a very negative way. Because if you have the potential for 42 doors to be open to you by taking one exam, why would you take one exam for the potential of one door open? It just doesn't make sense. So that's something I'm advocating for separately, but that's also kind of ties back to this, is what opportunities is Virginia putting out that makes us unique and draws people in.
To what extent do you think it might help to have some sort of loan forgiveness program for young attorneys practicing in, you know, whatever might be designated as a desert? I don't know if they do it with the Commonwealth's attorneys. I know some of the legal aid programs have some of that all the way. Is it still $5,000 a year?
It's $7,000 now in Virginia, and there's also federal money, federal forgiveness too.
Okay.
I think that could be huge, because also a lot of the areas that other folks have talked about, family law, for example, that's not a public service category, but it's still an area of huge need. And so someone that wants to practice family law, they don't have access to that sort of loan forgiveness, and it would be great if they could.
I keep going back to medical models, but I know a guy who was an anesthesiology nurse in Frederick, Maryland, and he really wanted to go to medical school. And West Virginia said to him, if you come to medical school at University of, West Virginia University and practice in a rural area for 6 years, it's almost like ROTC, right? You go free and you're done. It didn't make sense for him because he wasn't going to make that much more than he did as an anesthesiology nurse. But I guess that's another potential model. And by the time you spent 6 years in the community, maybe you're really vested in it.
Right, it could be a stipend after someone graduates law school or during law school, saying, if you come to an area like the Northern Neck and work, we will pay off your student loans for a certain, if you're here for a certain period of time. Obviously they're going to fall in love with it and stay longer, but if they do not meet those those terms, they pay back that money or something like that. Some sort of contingency contract like that, I think could be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, last call.
I have a question for the group if there's. Oh, good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, my name is Marcel Jones. You may have my email address. I signed up late this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right. You probably, a lot of people refer to me already as a judge. So I've been a judge for about 4 years, and I live in Spotsylvania County. But as Mr. Long has stated, I grew up and graduated from Northumberland County, so down here in the rural area. So I guess I have a unique perspective, to a certain extent, as far as being a past resident of the Northern Neck and now living in Spotsylvania County, which is more suburban area. And I also have an even more unique perspective from the bench, where I sit in 7 different jurisdictions in a given month. So I travel around from the Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline County, King George area, all the way down to the Northern Neck, Northumberland, Westmoreland, Lancaster. And I think it's a perfect fit for me because I have those 2 perspectives from being in the rural area as well as being in the suburban area. And so it works perfectly for me as far as the travel. Now from the bench, I guess what I see are those pro se parties. That's been talked about a lot today, and where they don't have the legal knowledge. All they are worried about is, I need protection. When we talk protective order, something happened last night, my life was in danger, and I need to do something. They're not thinking about the legal terms of protective order, reasonable apprehension of bodily harm, all the legal terms that we use on a daily basis. So that's not what they're thinking about when they come to court. And as judges, as stated before, we're not their advocates. We have to be impartial, of course. But in that preliminary ex parte hearing, we can guide them a little bit. Because it's one party there at that point in time. But then when you have the final protective order hearing, where there are usually 2 parties, of course we have to give that air of impartiality while we're sitting there. And oftentimes neither party, when we're talking about the rural areas, neither party has an attorney to represent them. And even worse, one party has an attorney, and the other party does not have an attorney. So it's a great disadvantage to the party that does not have an attorney in those situations. But at the same time, technically both parties are bound by the rules of evidence, so forth, and so on. And that, so you see it more down in the Northern Neck area. Probably 90% of the cases that come before me, that's a civil matter, are pro se. So that's a huge number. And when I start court, I try to just set the groundwork as far as, okay, this is what we're going to do. You go first, you go second. And this is what you need to do. This
is what I need to hear, this is what I need to find, and things of that nature. So they have some sort of groundwork of what they need to, what they need to present. And sometimes during the case, because a pro se, in a custody type case, they may testify for 2 minutes and that's it, and they feel like they proved their case or whatever they wanted to present. So I may have to ask additional questions to get more information out. But it would definitely do them some service, of course, if they had an attorney or at least some sort of advice, even if it's free advice, even if the attorney cannot go into court with them. You know, even if this is a conversation on the phone prior to, whether it's 30 minutes, 15 minutes, to give them some advice, to give them some sort of comfort as far as going into court, pro se, without an attorney, even if the attorney cannot be present in court. I heard a lot of speaking regarding remote hearings. That would be great if the courtrooms were set up, technically. But even when you have remote hearings, it can be difficult at times, where if you have a party in one place, you have an attorney in another place, and sometimes the individuals even talk over each other, and it can be very disruptive, and at times it sometimes can be difficult to control everyone. But I've had a case where I had individual on the phone, or 2 individuals on the phone, in the same hearing, and they end up fussing and cursing at each other on the phone. So it's difficult to bring that to order, and how I conduct order. I show, of course, respect to everyone, but I expect everyone to show respect to the court, and just to have some sort of structure and order in the court, so it won't get out of hand. But attorneys definitely, I would have probably come back down to the Northern Neck if I wasn't married to a lady that was not from the Northern Neck. So it's difficult for someone that's not from the Northern Neck to come to the Northern Neck. Something has to definitely drop. So I think it definitely needs to be some incentives, and it may have to be at the legislative level, where they have to pass certain laws and put it in the budget, to provide those incentives, especially for court-appointed counsel, guardian ad litems, where whether or not you're living in that jurisdiction, if you travel to that jurisdiction, or if you live in that jurisdiction, there should be some sort of incentive or subsidy, in those type of situations. Because it is difficult. I mean, as stated before, I'm not going to reiterate everything that's been said today, but a lot of good points and a lot of what I see from the bench, which is different than Northern Neck, which is different from the Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania County area, where a lot more individuals come to court with an attorney, and also there's more services, funded services for individuals that may need those services as well. I don't think the Northern Neck, unfortunately, have all the services. Not even talking about legal services, just other services, collateral services, other stakeholders that may help those individuals. But a lot of good points were made today, and that's what we're seeing from the bench as well, and that's what I experienced, to a certain extent, as a practicing attorney before I became a judge. So, any questions?
Did you know you wanted to go to law school when you were in high school?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. When I was in high school, I wanted to go into business, and I went to University of Richmond in college. I didn't know until maybe my junior year. I changed my business degree to education and sports administration, so I was going to be a PE teacher, like Mr. Long, until my junior year. So, not many people know that you don't have to go into political science to be an attorney. I think that's the misconception, that you have to go into that type of field. But my degree was in education and sports administration before I went to law school. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good job.
I have 2 questions for the group. Okay.
My name is Dawn Moore, and I do not have a law degree.
Yay.
Congratulations.
I am the president of the NAACP in Middlesex.
Mhm.
I heard, we deal with a lot of the issues that I heard today, but one main issue that I really didn't hear that we have dealt with a lot is civil, or not really civil, a lot of employment issues.
Mhm.
We have a lot of discrimination issues. I have one case that, you know, we are not lawyers. At one time, the NAACP was full of lawyers.
Mhm.
We are struggling to get that back at this point. Now that it's a major election year, all of a sudden we got a lot of people crawling out of the woodwork, but once the election is over, they're all gone. But I sat with this lady and we called almost everybody we could in the state of Virginia. She filled out the forms with the ACLU. She went to legal aid. They just did not have the time or resources to help her. We were calling lawyers in DC and Maryland, but they had to be able to practice in Virginia. So ultimately, she did not get the help that she really needed to get, and she would have won her case. But of course, nobody wants to take on the U.S. Postal Service either. Nobody wants to take on the schools. The school actually had the juvenile justice system come in and do a presentation to our kids. Then called the parents in when we called irate when our kids came home and said they would be arrested. So when we went to the training with the juvenile justice system, I was, needless to say, not very professional when we walked out of that room, because looking at our demographic, there was a divide. This group of children were being treated this way, and this group of children were being treated this way. I even see it in our justice system. For you to have a white deputy get nothing and a black deputy get the book thrown at him for lesser than what the white deputy did, I find it totally in the courtroom. And we're trying to get a meeting with our local judge. We do have one Commonwealth Attorney office. He has just been approved to get an assistant because the deputies are going to get body cams finally. But that person is going to be enamored with the body cam footage. So we're still down to basically a one Commonwealth office. And I just don't see the fairness. But we have been reaching out to organizations in our county. We have been working with a lot of them, but we don't have lawyers. We have like 3 or 4 old lawyers. I don't have time for you. I don't have time for you. Oh no, we're not even gonna mess with that. So we really don't have what our community needs. And we do have a lot of children being charged criminally through the school that should not be getting charged. So it is a big downside for us. And it's a block, and it's hard because you reach out to the other civic organizations, but they don't have lawyers either. We have a victim witness advocate, but I mean, she's working 24 hours. And she's working major projects, you know. So it's a big downfall, and I wish there was a way that everybody could come together and work together. We are always, in our community, the NAACP is always there to help wherever and however we can. So I don't know, but I just, that's where we see our problems.
I don't think I caught your exact location.
Middlesex.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Boston Vessel.
All right. Thank you all. I think we've had a great wealth of information and suggestions and clearly desire for change and improvements. And this is the first of 7 hearings that we're doing, probably, and maybe more, around the state to gather information from legal desert communities as well as metropolitan communities. And our timetable is to have recommendations that we present to the state bar and to the public next spring. And so we have a lot of work to do. And I've taken a lot of notes on ideas that I want to follow up on. We're also looking at what other states do, and that's a very valuable source of ideas for us as well. And you can continue to follow what we do on the State Bar websites. Mm-hmm. And if you search for what, you'll find
EGAD-VA, so EGAD-VA VSB. Yeah. Will bring you to our study committee page. 2 really important things on there. In addition to the YouTube channel where we'll be streaming all of these public hearings, we have surveys where you can provide feedback. So it's separate from the information that you provided to register for this event. It's actually part of the study committee's information gathering process. We have an all-attorney survey, which is designed for any Virginia attorney to fill out and just give us perspectives on how you chose where you are practicing. And then we have a legal opportunity zone survey. Right now we've identified 9 circuits that appear to be legal opportunity zones just based on the number of attorneys that are there and the growth of the Commonwealth. They're not matching. But I suspect through this process we're going to discover that there are additional locations. So if you are in one of those circuits and you're an attorney, I definitely would encourage you to fill out the Legal Opportunity Zone survey. And then if you are a non-attorney, please fill out the Legal Opportunity Zone survey, because it just gives us feedback on the legal needs you or the people that you serve have faced. And we want to know how that's impacted you. So go to our website for all of those resources. And then there's also flyers for the public and for attorneys or legal professionals to take on your way out. And feel free to photocopy those and share them as you see fit.
There's also a link on the page for our YouTube channel where you can watch previous meetings, watch future hearings. This will be posted in a few days as well. Jamie?
If you'll make sure to sign up on the registration, I can send the link out for that website to everyone who gives us their email address.
Perfect. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to thank Ann Klockner from Legal Aid Works and thank
absolutely.
Jamie for helping us make this work. Without Ann, we literally wouldn't be here.
Good. So yeah, thank you, Ann.